Story 1. A back ghost sparkle tub punch toy weather jellyfish trees dinner. Story 2. My mom bought me a gold-colored hairbrush, and I lost it. It wasn't expensive, just a gold-colored hairbrush from TK Maxx. She asked where it was. Usually, I would lie to her about things like that, saying, I don't know, or it's in a bag. But this time I thought, why do I do that? Why not just admit the truth? I went on holiday with friends and accidentally left it in the hotel room. She was absolutely furious, foaming at the mouth, angry that I lost a hairbrush. She kept bringing it up for years. She probably would still bring it up if she could. It reminded me exactly why I always lied to her on autopilot. Story 3. I was getting divorced. I told them, hoping this would be the place where we found common ground. My dad had been through a few divorces. I hoped he would remember how much he relied on his family during those times and possibly be there for me. I wanted him to support me even a fraction of the way he had supported my siblings or his friends. He called once a week after I told them, to see if I was okay and to check if I would still chaperone a trip for one of my younger siblings. But he never checked in again. When I tried to turn to my parents for support, they just changed the subject. It brought up a lot of feelings of abandonment and isolation that I thought I had worked through in therapy. I just wanted my dad to act like a dad for a little bit. Story 4. I was molested by a family member. I told them during a therapy session and specifically asked that they keep it confidential. However, my mother went and told all of her siblings. Story 5. That I have depression. I did not receive any support. I was considered a piece of trash, a faulty product, and a subpar human being. Eventually, I earned my own money, moved away from them, and took care of my mental health with both therapy and support from friends. I am currently coping just fine. Story 6. Telling my mother that my grandfather, her father, molested me was difficult. The trauma and anger from her not protecting me and making excuses for him were worse than if I had kept it to myself my whole life. Story 7. They told me I was manipulating the therapist by admitting all the controlling things my parents did. A 13-year-old manipulating someone with a Doctor of Philosophy degree by telling the truth. Story 8. I was pressing charges against my boss for attempted indecent assault. When my stepdad asked why I was not at work, my mom rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, her boss tried to get into her pants, so she quit," in a tone that suggested I was overreacting. Nobody accompanied me when I had to testify in court. Thank goodness for the victim's advocate. Story 9. I no longer believe in the Jehovah's Witnesses religion. My mother has been urging me for the last 3 years to do a Bible study or return to meetings. It is a doomsday group that repeatedly claims Armageddon is imminent, a claim they have made for over 100 years. They also have a serious problem with protecting pedophiles and covering up child sexual abuse cases. Story 10. I regret telling my mother I was sexually assaulted. She outed me to my father, and I had to explain in detail everything that happened once again. She wonders why I do not tell her things. Story 11. Telling my father I want to live with my mother. He asked, but my answer was too direct. 30 years have passed, and I still feel it lies between us. Story 12. My success at work. My dad now scoffs every time I act sensibly and calls me tight or lectures me if I don't spoil my nephews. He expects gifts to be very lavish at Christmas and on birthdays. He calls me stupid for not moving to Dubai, though we want to ensure our son has a close and healthy relationship with my wife's parents, who are wonderful people and role models. He brags about superficial things to his friends in the pub, talking about my job title and work rather than what really matters, such as his grandson growing or how great my wife is at handling the harder parts of life. She is the primary carer of a little human who needs so much while being my rock when I am stressed. If I or the company has had a bad day, my father-in-law calls to check on me and assures me he will support me if I decide to quit. In contrast, my dad calls to ask what it means for the business, how others will handle certain issues, what I am doing about it, and what will happen to the stock. I genuinely feel that since I shared insight into my work and its rewards, he does not see me as a human. I am not allowed to have bad days and tough times like everyone else. While these are first-world problems, his attitude led me to therapy. It negatively impacted my outlook on what is important in life for a time and brought up a lot of childhood trauma, negativity about shallowness, and questions about priorities. Story 13. My mom is very conservative. When she took me out to dinner after my high school graduation, she praised me for my efforts to get where I was. I felt safe sharing something. I told her I used cannabis. I just enjoyed the effects and stayed away from alcohol because older family members have severe addiction problems. I never touched hard drugs. She will never admit it, but that was the day her respect and care for me left her. It hurts me, but if I were to do what my grandfather, uncle, aunt, cousin, and other relatives do, it would be just tradition to develop a life-altering addiction to alcohol. God bless them. Story 14. That I was too honest. I should just hide everything I do. I do not want to be a goody two-shoes. Story 15. Nothing. They will never know it was not my brother, who was 2 years old, who threw a big piece of iron down the balcony, hitting a car. I was 7 and still feel guilty about it. Story 16. I once told my parents that I thought I had a tick on my back, and I was genuinely quite worried. My dad picked it off, and it was a salted peanut that had stuck to me. Fast forward to my parents meeting my future wife. My dad said, "We have a funny story to tell you." Story 17. I regret coming out to them. I thought they would support me and still love me since they openly supported many others in our family or friend groups who were gay or transgender. They became horrible people. They made me feel like I was a monster for coming out. They constantly compared me to my deceased brother, told me I was not allowed to come out to anyone else, and acted as if my coming out was personally harming them. I could have easily stayed in the closet until I could move out. Pretending was not too hard for me, but I felt safe at first, which now I know was not true. Story 18. That I was dating a dominatrix. My mother fat-shamed my college girlfriend, so I never told her about my dating life after that. In my mid-20s, she was concerned that I never talked about dating and pressured me to use dating sites because she did not want me single forever. I told her I did not need that because I had a partner. Of course, she asked many questions. When she asked, "What does she do?" I told her, "She beats and humiliates men. But not me. She does not bring work home with her." She was not pleased. This started a series of events leading to her calling my dad, whom she hated, to beg him to talk me out of the relationship. He knew the girl but did not know her profession. The girl was also displeased when I told her what happened because now my dad knew what she did. Story 19. Gosh, nothing. My parents were endlessly supportive. I could tell them anything. I miss my dad's pep talks and my mom's fierce loyalty. I wish more people could have had parents like mine. They weren't perfect, but they gave perfection a shot. Story 20. I smoke marijuana. Not because she is disappointed, but because now she tries to borrow some from me almost every day. Then she gets mad when I tell her no because it is expensive where I live. Story 21. Admitting that I still remember the abuse. I was lied to, gaslit, and told I was delusional and making things up. Story 22. I regret telling the woman who raised me about what happened with my boyfriend. That man was married, and I did not know the whole time. I went to stay over the first time and realized the wife's things in the closet in the morning. He invited me over when he was drinking, so he did not realize you may not want to invite the affair partner over. I felt ill when I realized. I came home and she was visiting. Literally 30 minutes after I found out that the man I absolutely adore was just using me, I told her, wanting some comfort because I felt like I was going to shatter. She huffed and said it was obvious. It was not, though. He met my biological mother, my family. I met some of his cousins and his friends. I probably looked so stupid to them. We were always busy. I had 2 full-time jobs in school, so I never had time to drive 45 minutes to his place. He would come visit me. I guess his wife was out of town. I found out I was pregnant a month later. My baby is the best thing that has ever happened to me. She was helping me change my daughter, and she likes talking for her. She was saying in Spanish, "Grandma, I want a boyfriend. I want one who is tall, handsome, funny, and single. Divorced is okay, but single, not married." And it hurt so badly. She constantly makes snide remarks to me, and I hate it. She was helping me take care of my daughter, but we no longer get along. Today is her last day helping me, and I am so happy she is going to be gone. I cannot afford daycare, but I would rather be broke eating frozen vegetables and pasta than be near her anymore. I cannot take it anymore. She makes my low self-esteem worse. Story 23. I have an autoimmune disease. I have been very sick since my early teens, but my parents were in denial and refused to pay for doctors even when I arranged my own transportation to the clinics. Now that I am in my 20s and have my own insurance, I have been working with a specialist in rheumatology and finally have an answer as to what is wrong. I still do not get any support from them, but now my email inbox is full of misleading information about how eating blueberries will cure me. Story 24. I told my father when I was about 15 that I was self-harming because my emotions were overwhelming. I was experiencing depression and later found out I was having meltdowns due to autism, which I was diagnosed with at 27. It took a lot of courage to admit this because I needed help. He told me I was doing it for attention and that if I was genuinely hurting, I would not have told anyone. This still hurts 15 years later. Story 25. When I was 12, I passed a note to my mother describing severe depression and suicidal tendencies. The initial reaction was helpful, but then it became chaotic. You'll have to tell a therapist everything. They will judge you, think you're crazy, and they won't really be able to help you. So if you promise me you won't hurt yourself, you won't have to go. I remember a bizarre experience where I was comforting her and was made to feel guilty for putting her through that. She snooped through my journals and saw the depression in action. She was more angry that I wrote bad things about her. Unsurprisingly, I went on to have many more years of severe depression. Story 26. I had a miscarriage. Somehow, she made it all about herself and her missing grandchild. I did not tell her that I had already started planning a termination when it happened. Story 27. That I stopped being Christian. I was a teenager at the time. My Bible-beating dad made my life hell and treated me like I was scum. Despite me being a generally well-behaved kid, I did not do drugs, mess around with boys and get pregnant, smoke, drink, steal, cuss out adults, get into fights or any of that. But that's how little it took for him to turn on me. I should have just kept my mouth shut instead of trusting him. Story 28. I don't regret it, but my mother cried when she found out I shaved my arms. I thought that was an overreaction. Story 29. What my income is, they bring up every time we talk about my future. Story 30. I told my mother I was struggling with bulimia. Until I went no contact for years, almost every time I saw her, she would ask if I had quit throwing up yet. I am not sure where I got my empathy from. Story 31. When I started my business, my two mentors told me to be quiet and never share my business with anyone. They never even told their mother. Family is the one to babble. Family is the one to brag. Family is the one to leak secrets. I kept my business a secret for 8 months, but my success peaked overnight. I went from $200 per day to $3,000 per day almost immediately. Then the success continued, and I was making $100,000 per month. I had no choice but to get my family's help. I regret telling them about the business, the overnight success, and involving them. They were the ones who spread the gossip while I stayed silent for years. It got so bad that entire neighborhoods knew about my success, and strangers would walk up to me saying, "Hey, you run this business, right? Are you hiring?" I value secrecy and privacy. I do not want to be stalked by strangers. I do not want to be in danger. My family still does not understand this. Story 32. That I had been sexually assaulted. The harmful things my father said to me caused just as much damage as the assault itself. Story 33. I regret letting them know that I have a difficult time parenting. I was a bit of a troubled child, I guess. They only make fun of me and tell me I deserve it. It was pointless and only made me feel worse about myself and the situation. I still have difficulty parenting. My child is very strong-willed, and the people who should be my biggest support chose to mock me instead of offering advice. Story 34. I told my parents I failed a class in college. I thought it would be better to be honest, but they have never let it go. They still bring it up sometimes, even years later. I should have just kept that to myself. Story 35. Told my mom I feel depressed after my cousin literally committed suicide because of it. Her response: Why? Why do you feel like that? I explained it to her. She seemed confused for a bit, then stopped listening properly after 3 words. She is the reason why I do not like speaking in general. Apparently, I have an amazing speaking voice that could be used for radio or videos, but growing up with that hindered me. Story 36. Opening my mouth about finances. My mother is the drama queen of all drama queens. Zero exaggeration. She will poke and prod and make snide remarks just to do it, just to argue. I make decent money, bills are paid. Other than that, I'm not well off by any means, but that doesn't mean I don't spend or buy things. Now, anytime I see my mother, usually once a week, I could be wearing shoes she's seen before that I've owned for 2 years. It's always, "Oh, new shoes, huh? Must be making that good money. Is that a new t-shirt too? You're always in something new every time I see you. Must be nice. I never made money like that. You must be doing real well. You must have thousands saved. You should never have to ask us for anything or help. You're real well off." When in reality, I struggle from time to time and I'm not buying like she makes it seem. It gets really old every time though. Story 37. 2 things. 1. I was bisexual. I told my stepmother, who was always really progressive and with whom I had a good relationship. I was 15. At first, she wouldn't believe me, but when she did, she said she wouldn't tell my father. 2 days later, she said, "So I told your father." Luckily, my father is a very accepting good old country boy, but still. After that, my stepmother would always ask if I liked guys or girls and wouldn't accept that I liked both. She also asked if I liked it anally, but she was a little drunk. 2. I wanted to kill myself. I had told them several times when I was a teenager. They would cry, ask why, and say they would help me get into therapy. They never did. Fast forward to college. I made the mistake of confiding in a friend, and she told one of the counselors. For some reason, they called my father, and when he confronted me, I told him the truth. That I had tried several times over the years and nothing came of it. I explained everything and he went silent. A few hours after he went to work, my stepmother came home angry. She started calling me an ungrateful liar, yelled at me, and threatened to take away the personal computer that I paid for because apparently the computer was the problem. Then she took my phone, and when I tried to take it back, she claimed that I had hit her. She then gave me my phone and said that if I hit her again, she would have me arrested. Meanwhile, my little brother, who is severely autistic, was holding the dog and crying in his room the whole time. After 3 hours, she had me on my knees apologizing to her for lying. If it is not clear, I do not talk to my stepmother much. Story 38. When I was 23, I abandoned a bicycle they had bought me for my 17th birthday because the lock had rusted shut, and my unstable neighbor had thrown it over the railing. If I cut the lock, it would fall 2 stories to the ground. I was too stressed to deal with it, and my father still mentions that it was a nice and expensive bicycle. I am 41. Story 39. I had just gone through a breakup and wanted to get out of town, so I made plans to visit my family. No one told me Mom was going in for a magnetic resonance imaging scan that day. She had Alzheimer's disease and had apparently been having hip pain. I had plans, but when we got the news she had to have emergency surgery, I decided to stay with her in the hospital. They gave me a cot, but I was so exhausted. The cot was soaking wet. I lay in it not realizing it was wet. Then I had a meltdown. I accidentally woke my mom. She tried to calm me from her hospital bed. I know now that I am autistic, but at the time I did not. Having this uncontrollable outburst with nowhere to go to hide and manage the emotions made things worse. It was hell internally. I was so mad at myself for not just being quiet, but I was crying so hard I was having an asthma attack on top of it. I will always regret that. She was so sick and needed my support, and I ended up just being a pain in her side, which she had plenty of. I will also always regret how I would lose patience with her when she tried to describe something but could not find the words. I, of all people, know how that feels. I am ashamed and embarrassed I did that to my ailing mother. Story 40. I told my mother I vape occasionally, as in when I drink, which is once every 3 months or so. She proceeded to call me an addict. Story 41. Venting my frustration with things from school. Last time I was venting about my teacher. My dad called the school and told them that she was being unfair to me. I had a target on my back for the rest of the school year and was placed in the lowest math class for my freshman year of high school. Story 42. Telling my mom that my religious beliefs are different from hers and her husband's, my divorced parents. She was one of those who tried to be the cool mom type who would say, "You can talk to me about anything, and I'll be there for you. My daughter and I are best friends." That kind of stuff. When I told her, she became uncomfortable, dismissed any discussion about why, and told me not to tell her husband. This caused a big disconnect between us because my different beliefs are what saved me from harming myself due to severe depression in my youth. Story 43. I am reasonably competent at fixing computer issues. Story 44. I smoked marijuana while I was in college. I have not used it in years, and I still receive those comments. Story 45. My mother made me feel bad when I expressed my concerns about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Even though my siblings have autism, because I mask my symptoms well and can still manage a job and be independent, she does not believe I have it, despite the reasons I provided. It is frustrating that people think you need to be visibly struggling or dependent to still face challenges daily. People often think your diagnosis does not matter when they know others who have it harder. Story 46. When I got too involved with people I shouldn't have been helping back in the day, they wouldn't let me stop supporting them. I was 20 and people started getting killed in gang initiations. We weren't a gang. The night before, I told them one of my best friends was shot in the head while walking out of his apartment. Story 47. I still regret admitting to my parents that I once lied about where I was going and ended up getting into minor trouble. They were more upset about the dishonesty than the actual trouble I got into, and I wish I had been truthful from the start. Story 48. I told my parents I do not like hugs or being touched, and they get really angry at me. My mom always pulls the "but I gave birth to you" card. I seriously do not really trust either of them. Story 49. I am a 21-year-old male coming out to my mom about being bisexual. I then sat with her for a whole hour answering her questions about whether I had been sexually assaulted by anyone. After convincing her that nothing happened, she told me it was just a phase. Story 50. Telling them about my eating disorder. They thought they could punish me into recovery, and when that did not work, they gave me updated daily bills for my inpatient treatment. Not a supportive environment for recovery. Story 51. Nothing. I just miss my dad and wish I could see my mother more often. Story 52. I regret telling my mother that my wife and I were going to stop trying for a baby. I had to listen to her cry over the phone. She passed away abruptly last year. It makes me wish I had not told her at all, so it would have been one less sadness. But hindsight is 20/20, I guess. Story 53. I was self-harming. She would have found out about it through the school doctor, but I panicked and wrote to her while she was at work one morning before school. Story 54. I like reading fantasy books and watching Japanese animated shows. My mother started constantly calling Japanese animated shows stupid and promptly banned me from watching them. She constantly tries to get me to read classic literature instead, telling me fantasy books are worthless. Story 55. When I was 12, I admitted to my parents that I had a problem wanting to look at naked people all the time. This was not a good decision. Even now, while I am over 30, my dad still compares us, saying we are struggling with pornography. It is uncomfortable. I do not actually have a problem. I believe it is natural to masturbate and use materials for such private moments. However, we were fundamentalist Christians, so everything normal and enjoyable felt like a soul-deep struggle against evil. I do not regret showing them what was in the toilet when I was concerned, but I regret saying anything at all about pornography. Now I have learned that you really cannot trust some people with every part of yourself. I do not know if I will ever know if that is truly true, and I hate it. Story 56. I spent £4.50 savings from my paper round on an LP in the late 1970s. My mother said, "How much?" They must have seen you coming. What a waste of money for a piece of plastic. 40 minutes later, she added, and another thing, life is hard, and you can't expect to succeed if you allow yourself to be duped into wasting money. For decades, I felt a massive pang of guilt when buying music until Spotify came along. Story 57. I got a school lunch specifically for the cake it came with in first grade. During lunch, a girl came over and asked if I would trade my cake for a Hostess Ding Dong. I did not want to be mean and say no, so I traded. After school, when my mom picked me up, she asked how the cake was. I told her I ended up trading it, and she went on about how she paid for that lunch and I did not even eat it. We picked up my older brother from junior high, and the first thing she told him was how she could not believe I traded the cake. Then my dad came over that evening for his visitation, and she told him and went on about it again. I never got a school lunch again after that. Story 58. Not necessarily admitting it, but I regret letting my mother know nearly everything about me and my life after I moved from my childhood home. However, I did not have anyone else. Story 59. When I was a child, I came back with a bleeding scar on my forehead from scratching myself. When my father asked me where it had come from, I blamed a classmate, and my father went to yell at him in front of everyone at school. He still talks to me about it today, and I never told him I scratched myself. Story 60. That I have thought about checking out early. How do you tell the people that made you that you do not want it anymore? Story 61. Attempting to tell my father I have been developing severe anxiety. He has not spoken to me for about 3 years. Story 62. I told them that putting me in an all-boys college was the worst mistake they made with my life. I was 17 then, and I was a little naive. When I told them that it made me a very reserved person, and that college did not allow any connection to the outside world, all they could say was, "We did not know it was that bad." Guess what? I am still unable to talk to women on a daily basis, 5 years later. Story 63. Anything I have ever told my mother, to be honest. We still talk because she is lonely, pushes everyone away, and sees her dogs as barely more than a nuisance, which they are because she refuses to make any attempt to train them or improve their behavior. I do not tell her anything beyond the superficial minimum about my life because I do not want to hear about it. Story 64. I admitted to my father that I was struggling at some point, and he told a girl I grew up with whom I dislike because I do not know why. He likes talking without reason. Story 65. The only thing I do not regret admitting to them is that I was being groomed by my oldest brother. That is the only thing I admitted that I can remember ending somewhat well. Everything else I admitted to them was weaponized at some point. Concerns about how hard controlling my emotions sometimes was. The next time we fought or I got in trouble, if I showed even a hint of emotion, they called back to those concerns. Admitted I was depressed? I was told that I just wanted to be miserable, that I did not have anything to be depressed about, and so on. Told them I did not feel sexual attraction? I was told, in return, that I would change my mind when I found the right partner. It is, frankly, why I hold my cards close to my chest. I am used to people in positions of authority using what I tell them to hurt me. So, I just do not tell people things unless I have to. And yes, I am working on this in therapy. Story 66. How much I earn. Keep your income secret. If it is too low, you will feel like a failure. If it is high, you will feel like you have not been responsible enough with how you spent it. Story 67. I was the one who broke the vase, not the mysterious wind I blamed for years. Story 68. I am getting close to being 30 and still have no idea what to do with my life. Story 69. That I was sexual assault. My mom asked me what I was wearing immediately after. No comfort, only judgment. I feel like I am a disgusting sinner in her eyes. Story 70. When I was in treatment, they had parents' night where they encouraged us to open up about the things we had done. This was a horrible idea. I had to watch my mother's heart break as I told her about things I did behind her back during active addiction. Story 71. Nothing. It has been a fight for everything I have wanted, from my own hairstyle to the right to privacy, to being able to have certain friends, like certain music, and have certain hobbies. My parents are very conservative Christians. My whole childhood, I was stubborn and accepted the punishment for the sake of being myself. That included some mistakes I wish I could take back. But as far as my parents know, I regret none of it. It is a fight to be your own person, and some people never win that battle. Story 72. Everything my mother did for me to try to help me as a troubled teenager ultimately did more harm than good for me in the long term. Even though I know she did only the best she knew, I still chose to be honest about the fact that I feel it deeply hindered my growth and ability to be a functional adult. Because it did. Sometimes I wish I had just not said anything because I know it broke her heart, and I feel this heavy guilt. She did not need to know that. I hate that I hurt her feelings. I do not really look back now and see a good reason for it. She ignored my call for the first time ever after I told her that. Things are fine now, but my heart aches whenever I think about that conversation. Story 73. I told them I got a navel piercing. They forced me to take it off even though I loved it, and threatened to stop supporting me financially. I am a college student. Story 74. From the first time I admitted anything to my parents, they treated me like a problem that had to be dealt with. Meanwhile, my sister, who was a drug addict and pathological liar, was seen as a saint who could do no wrong. I ended up taking the blame for everything she did, even when they caught her in the act. Somehow, it was always my fault. Story 75. I told them about a party I went to in high school. I ended up getting grounded for much longer than expected. It was not worth the trouble at all. Story 76. Nothing I would ever fully regret saying, but I cannot let a past event they did to me that hurt me go. I felt pretty unloved as a child and traumatized. My parents were active military soldiers and often left unannounced to go to Iraq or Afghanistan. That has affected how I am now, though I have resolved it and am much better than before. Oh boy, that stirs up some drama. You think it was easy for me too, and all that. I should have never admitted it hurt. Of course it hurt for them too, but I was dragged into their life, not the other way around. We have since grown as a group. Story 77. I broke up with my Russian girlfriend in my early 20s because we were very different, and she was two-faced and mean behind closed doors. My parents really liked her and still reminisce about her to this day. Over 10 years later, saying, "What do you mean? She could never be mean and was always so sweet." They act like I treated her poorly. While those reasons were true, the real reason was that she was very dull in bed, and no matter how much I tried to talk about it with her, it was like being with a wet mattress that made no sound. It was kind of strange, to be honest. Story 78. I do not tell my mother anything personal or private, because she cannot be trusted with anything in confidence. Story 79. I was forced to admit that I was self-harming and depressed when I was about 12 years old. My laptop and phone, which did not have an internet connection, were taken away for over a year because that was believed to help me. After that, I was not trusted with anything. If I wore long sleeves, I had to show my arms. If it was hot and I wore jeans, I had to show my legs. If I wore what was considered a suspicious number of bracelets, I had to show my arms. All of this only made me more careful about where I was cutting. Story 80. I regret sharing doubts about my relationship from when we first got together. I told them and my best friend. Of course, that is going to be in the back of their mind for however long we are together. Story 81. I asked if I was adopted, and my father said yes. I am 35 years old, and my mother has been deceased for 2 years. It was a closed adoption, and no one knows anything. They have all rejected me. They are all narcissists. Story 82. How young I started using heavy drugs. My mother blames herself, and yes, that makes sense, but it was so long ago, and I do not need to burden her with those details now. All it does is cause her pain. We are both very different people now, and I love her very much. It upsets me that she continues to blame herself decades later. Story 83. I told my Christian grandma I did not want to be baptized when she asked me when I was going to get it done. She gave me the whole speech about how I would not be able to get into heaven and asked me if I wanted to burn in fire. I knew it was a bad idea to tell her, but I am not doing that against my will. Sorry, it is not happening. Story 84. I have a boyfriend and I am going to move out with him. They have been shaming me for my relationship and us moving in together. Every day it is a fight, and I think I am going crazy. Story 85. Opioid addiction is real. No matter my accomplishments, if the family does not understand, it is seen as a choice and a weakness. Addiction, in general, is difficult to address within a conservative family system. Story 86. When my sister was in 6th grade, she let someone copy her homework and got caught. By sheer chance, another teacher called and spoke to my mom that day about a field trip she was chaperoning. When my sister got home from school, my mom said, "Your teacher called." Before I could signal to my sister that it was not about the cheating, she confessed everything while sobbing. It was funny to me because my mom had no idea. Story 87. She was abusive. According to her, no, she was not. In fact, she told me she thought about it during the 6 months she refused to speak to me, and she realized that in my entire life, she has never done anything wrong to me. That is when I realized she is very crazy. Story 88. I have stopped sharing my goals and dreams with my father because he has never been supportive, and as a result, I lose motivation for them. Story 89. My mother shared everything I told her, so I stopped telling her anything after I was forced to share that I had started my menstrual cycle so she would buy me supplies. I begged her not to tell anyone. She promised she would not, but I heard her on the phone less than an hour later telling her best friend. That was the end of trust. Story 90. Like many women, I admitted I was sexually abused, and my mother used it as ammunition against my brother, the abuser, in a fight the same week. Not because she cared, but because she wanted to win. This was a classic example of narcissistic behavior. Additionally, I told both of my parents the day I lost my virginity consensually. Why? Because of obsessive-compulsive disorder and fear that if I didn't tell, I would somehow be a terrible person. That is just embarrassing because they did not need to know, and it is not like they cared enough to get me on birth control. Story 91. I, Raphael Edward Cruz, am the Zodiac Killer. They did not take it well. Story 92. My mom asked if I was expecting an order from Adam and Eve. I probably should have said it was a bad address. Story 93. I wrote a letter to my parents when I was 15 stating that the domestic violence gave me suicidal thoughts. A few days or weeks later, it was not addressed at all, except for my mother mocking me. If I could go back, I would keep those feelings to myself and do more to distance myself from them instead of trying to earn their love. Story 94. This is not my story, but I read a news article about a child who had spent hundreds of hours working on his island in the game Minecraft and proudly showed it to his mother. Some time passed, and she went into his game and deleted it because he was not waking up on time. This deeply upset the child. I remember reading that and feeling intense anger at the idea that my parents might have done the same to me as a child. This is why I keep my creative projects to myself until I share them publicly. Story 95. I have always had depression. When I felt suicidal, my mother would always tell me to talk to her instead of keeping it inside. One day, I gathered the courage to tell her that I wanted to die, and she took me to the police, asking them to help me. Story 96. I was scammed by someone, and now they don't trust me because I fell victim to a romance scam. Story 97. That I was doing sex work. Even though they were supportive, it still gets brought up in hurtful ways during arguments. Story 98. The night I tried mushrooms for the first time and called my mother like 12 times. Took years to rebuild what I messed up that night. Story 99. Told my mom the first time I had a threesome. I have no filter. That moment taught me everything I needed to know about my future relationship with her. Story 100. There is nothing my mother found out that I wanted to share. Story 101. I did not hit a mailbox with my mother's LeBaron when I was 16. I sideswiped 2 parked cars. Since I admired my father, hearing him tell me how disappointed he was that I had lied when I finally came clean about it was a gut punch with a sledgehammer. I sat in my room for what felt like hours and cried. Story 102. I regret telling my father what I enrolled in. I do not think I have ever felt so betrayed in my life, and I do not think I can ever tell him what is going on in my life again. Story 103. That I was an intravenous methamphetamine addict. I feel like they do not look at me the same anymore. Story 104. Nights of drunken excursions. The general response was, "Oh dear." Story 105. I regret telling my mother I have battled depression. I am 49 years old. I have had 4 major episodes in my life. They were debilitating. I did not eat, shower, or go to work. Nothing. All I wanted was to sleep. Everything hurt. Getting dressed, putting gas in the car, going to the store. I had no idea depression affected every aspect of life. I never knew my father, so I asked my mother. She glossed over it and made me feel abnormal. She said she never had problems like that and told me I should take vitamins, follow a diet, and exercise. She made me feel very small. I should have kept it to myself. Story 106. I wish that instead of coming out, I had just disappeared and never contacted my father again. It would have been the same outcome without all the pain and heartache. Story 107. It was 2000, and I was dropping out of college. I had stopped going to class and fell into a deep depression. My mother had a mental breakdown due to medication the year before, and we never dealt with it as a family. I spent my days on a chat platform. I met a girl 5 years older than me who lived 9 states away and had a child. We shared many interests, and I was told she was a stripper. I quit stripping. Once we decided to become officially long distance. I moved back home, kept all of this to myself, and wrote letters and sent gifts to her and her daughter. Eventually, I couldn't take it, and we broke up a few times and got back together. But finally, it all ended. I wrote a letter, told my parents what was happening, and went to a movie. We never talked about it. It was so embarrassing, and it ate me alive for years. It wasn't until around 2012 that I tried searching for her. I realized I had been catfished the entire time. I knew it from the start. She only sent me one picture, and even though it was a primitive time for digital webcams, she refused to use them. I was lonely, in denial, and desperate for someone to like me. Story 108. I was having panic attacks at school and needed help. I never realized that if I just took a deep breath and some vitamins, I would be instantly cured. Story 109. I got tested for sexually transmitted infections. My mother did not know I was sexually active and made me pay for the test, which cost $800, plus give her a $1,000 fine as punishment. I was a college student and completely broke. Story 110. That I did not vote for Donald Trump. That I was going to go to therapy. That I got a C in calculus in college. That I planned to return something of extreme sentimental value to my ex. My mom called me a stalker. What? I have not spoken or even tried to contact him in 3 years. I just feel like it is the right thing to do, because I do not want to throw it away or donate it, and because I know he would really appreciate having it back. I do not expect even a thank you from him, but we broke up very cordially. I just want it out of my apartment so I can declutter. Story 111. Basically, everything I said to my mom in private would become gossip within the next day or two. My personal favorite, though, has to be when I told her I was self-harming. She asked me to show her my arm, which I did. She then proceeded to smack my open wounds and checked herself into the nearest psychiatric ward because she needed a break. Story 112. Borderline personality disorder forms from emotional neglect in childhood. They do not take kindly to criticism of their parenting. Story 113. To my mom only. When I lost my virginity, my friends were mostly guys, and my sister was not living at home by then. I had to tell my mom because I was worried about how much I was bleeding. She did not chastise me but admitted she would have preferred not to know. It is cringeworthy when I think about it. Story 114. Before she left us, I told my mom I had no sympathy for her depression or alcoholism. When she told me that she did not care if she missed out on being in the lives of her kids and grandkids, I told her, "You giving up on your life means so am I." I felt betrayed and hurt that she gave up. I still do. She drank through her liver just a few months later. It was one of the last meaningful things I ever said to her. I still feel this way about all of it. I just regret actually telling her. The worst part is that I am not sure she was lucid enough to comprehend or remember that I was even in the room. Story 115. I regret ever mentioning my mental health to my now religious mother. She always speaks with pity in her tone, which makes the situation worse and turns any good day bad instantly. Story 116. That I had a crush on someone of a different race. The racist yelling that came afterward was something no 10-year-old should have to hear. Story 117. Oh boy, when I told my mom about the first crush I had on a guy whom I really liked and who gently rejected me, my mom said, "What did you expect? You don't wear makeup and you're frumpy." When I finally admitted to my mom and doctor at the same time that I was dealing with severe depression, the doctor said, "You're a girl, that's normal." My mom agreed. I didn't seek help again for 6 years. When my current fiancé and I were in a long-distance relationship and I was getting my life together to move to his state, she said, "You know he's going to cheat on you. Anything that ever happened to me was my fault. I definitely do not have lingering, crippling guilt about everything now." Story 118. Breaking down and practically begging for better communication between my dad and me, kind of asking why we cannot just talk and express ourselves to each other. Nothing ever changed. It made me realize that people sometimes do not change, and I wish I had never opened up that way. Story 119. Many people here are letting me know that I am at the very least not wrong in that I should not tell my parents anything unless it is too late to do anything about it. Story 120. When I got my first job that paid well, I told them how much I was making. Let's just say I became an adult overnight. Story 121. When I lost my virginity at 14, I had been sexually active with my boyfriend for close to a year. I told her it was the first time, but she became upset and tried to force me to take a pregnancy test. I was already trapped and abused, so it did not change anything. Story 122. I just want to say that our parents are still living their lives. When challenges come their way, they may not always have the answers or know how to help, so they have mechanisms to cope. This is their first time experiencing the world as we are, so don't take it too deeply. Story 123. I told my mother about my first crush way back in 2nd grade. The next day, the whole family knew about it and made me the laughingstock. As a child, particularly a 2nd grader, I did not really know how to respond. I felt attacked. Imagine the innocent me entrusting my mother with this little secret, expecting that it would stay between the two of us. I had to defend myself and pretended it was not bothering me, when in fact I felt so ashamed. Back then, children my age were not as vocal about crushes compared to today's generation. So yes, my trust issues somehow stemmed from this. I learned not to trust fully and to keep things to myself. Goodbye. Story 124. That I was so depressed as a teenager that I thought about suicide daily. I thought of it so often I became passive about it. I hope I don't wake up. It would be great if I was hit by a car in a freak accident. An aneurysm would be great right about now. It got so bad that the thought of dying in my sleep actually helped me fall asleep faster and feel very safe and cozy. Since telling them, it hasn't stopped being used against me anytime I feel sad. My family, being a giant gossip-filled pit of immature upbringings, treats me like I am walking around seconds from harming myself or that I am mentally disabled. One time, I mistakenly told my aunt that I found a very feminine man attractive, and that I am okay with bisexual relationships. Since that slip-up, every failure I've had, every mental breakdown suffered, or argument I've been in was blamed on me not being normal. Oh, well, that's how it is for people like that. No, Aunt Liz, me punching your son out cold on his birthday in front of everyone wasn't because I thought Tim Curry looked good in makeup. I shattered his nose for groping my friend's ass and telling her out loud, in front of the rest of my cousins and family friends, that a British cigarette like me wouldn't be able to give her what she wanted. We weren't even dating. It was solely to make me the butt of everyone's joke, to be the center of the conversation as someone who everyone thinks is easy to mock. If it wasn't for my friends or Bailey, my cat who sadly left us after being my closest and most loved confidant for nearly 27 years, I don't think I would have made it much longer. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.